play. Yeah, welcome. We are so glad. Lauren, if you could keep allowing people into the Zoom, that would be great. Or we can even take the waiting room off. But thank you so much for joining us for Embodying Degrowth, an event with the Maintainers Movement Fellows. They are here who are pinned on your Zoom screen. My name is Liliana, and I'm the Community Outreach and Events Coordinator at the Maintainers. And the Maintainers is a global research network interested in the concepts of maintenance, infrastructure repair, and the myriad forms of labor and expertise that are necessary to sustain our human-built world. If you want to learn more about the Maintainers, you can check out our website. Let me put it into the chat. And also read our Code of Engagement, which is a set of values that we like to follow for all events and community gatherings. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This event is going to be recorded for our collective reference so that we can be in touch and kind of keep thinking about these concepts. So just so you know that. And we will also be able to send out a recording to folks who weren't able to attend live. And with that, we're going to take some notes and we'll be sending out a takeaway document so that we can be collecting our understanding of embodying degrowth, as well as some actions and reflections that we can send to you after. And yeah, I'll pass it to you, Lauren. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Lauren, I'm project manager of the Maintainers, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the fellowship. So the Maintainers Movement Fellowship is a year-long engagement that advances the movement for maintenance thinking and action. And it's composed of fellows whose maintenance, repair, and care work and practice have substantial connections to the environment. So this year we felt that given that we're in an age of climate urgency and social crisis, it was important to highlight this component in our fellows call. So throughout this year, the fellows have worked independently by researching and exploring their own practices through their blog posts, their interviews, and bringing their perspectives to the rest of the cohort. So their focus is aligned with the Maintainers' values, and that we believe that societies must care for individuals that give care. We highlight the importance of grounded research practices, and also we seek to build capacity to support maintenance practices and also maintainers. So what brings us here today is a celebration of the Fellows collaborative work. They have taken the challenge of tackling the topic of degrowth. They have done so from an interdisciplinary perspective. And in doing that, many powerful and very profound ideas that we'll hear more of today have emerged, and also from that you may have heard in the podcast. So we'll talk more about that, just aside of celebrating their work as researchers, public communicators, and educators. I just want to mention that it's been a wonderful experience and honor to work with them. I believe that they have embodied the growth themselves in creating and cultivating a space for care, honesty, curiosity, encouragement throughout the fellowship. So we're very thankful for that. And we're excited to open up the discussion today and hear what others have to say about degrowth and reflect on that, and hopefully envision action together. So we have the chat box. You can pop any question that you have. We will have a facilitated Q&A session, so we'll get back to them. And yeah, and that's all. So over to Max.
All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. And just wanted to start off up top by thanking you all for being here. It's a real joy and honor to get to share this space with y'all. Hope everyone, wherever you are, is able to get some rest after what feels like an impossibly long year. Yeah, just really grateful to everyone for joining us today. And also I just wanted to give a big shout out to Lauren, Liliana, Andy, Jessica, and everyone at the Maintainers team for all their incredible support while we, the 2022 Maintainers Movement Fellows, conducted our work over the past year. Their help has been truly invaluable, and I highly recommend that everyone here who's interested in the things that we're going to talk about today should reach out to the Maintainers, support the Maintainers, send your ideas to the Maintainers, because it's a really, really great group of folks that I've been honored to work with, along with my fellows over the past year. So I'm going to keep this nice and short because, as you probably know, over at my podcast, Working People, We've had the pleasure of running two special episodes on our feed that are both up now, so you can go listen to those wherever your podcasts are sold, right? Spotify, Google, Stitcher, what have you. But the first one was an interview that I actually conducted for our group project with workers in the oil and gas industries, talking about what a worker-focused just transition would mean to them. But we also published a really big and special collaborative podcast that really kind of sums up, our collective work as a group on our group project Embodying Degrowth over the past year. So if you listen to that, you get to meet Liliana, Lauren, Andy. You get to meet me and the rest of my incredible fellows for the 2022 cohort of Maintainers Movement Fellows, the great Tona Rodriguez, Sam Bennett, Layla Bejat, and Rheanna Chen. It's a bittersweet occasion because I hope that we get to work together more in the future. But I think we all need some rest. But it's truly been an honor to work with y'all over the past year. So I would highly recommend that you check out those two episodes if you want to get a deeper sense of what we've been working on over the past year. But we're going to kind of talk about some of that today. And after working on the big kind of collaborative podcast where we break down our group project Embodying Degrowth, a couple things stood out to me that I just want to kind of put on the table up front. And then I'm going to toss things to Rheanna. Like we talked about a number of different topics to focus on as a group, and it felt like the question of degrowth was at the intersection of a lot of our different respective fields of expertise and professional interest. And I think that everything that we brought to the table as a group really inspired a lot of thoughtful discussions, questions, new ideas, right? None of us took the term degrowth at face value, right? A big part of what this project was interrogating, what does degrowth mean? What could it mean? Why, do people perhaps object to the concept of degrowth? What does it look like in practice, right? And what does it look like in theory? And so I think that the thing I wanted to just note up top is that for all of us going into this fellowship, we had such big ideas of what we wanted to do. And then as, time wore on, as life wore on, war in Ukraine, still dealing with COVID, so much going on in our personal and professional lives, we inevitably had to sort of winnow down. But I think that was mirrored in a lot of the people that we spoke to for this project, right? I think one of the through lines from us as a group and doing this research work to the very people we were talking to for that research, the people who we believe are embodying degrowth in their daily lives, is that you got to do what you can with what you've got and do the best you can where you are, right? No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And I think that there's a sort of cognitive disconnect for all of us because the problem of climate catastrophe is so massive. The necessary changes that need to happen in our world to adequately address it feels so far away that it feels like the only solution is something massive. But what I think is very heartening is that the more that everyone contributes a little, the less massive that hill is to climb, right? The less impossible that task is. And so I think that from everyone here bringing their whole selves to the group, offering care to one another and understanding, bringing their respective expertise together, that helped us build a project that we're all really proud of, in the same way that the folks we spoke to, they put in the work every single day to make the world just a little bit better. And we can't be so sure that we can predict what the cumulative effect of those efforts to build a better world will be. We just know that we've got to dig in and do the work. And so it's been a real honor to do that work with the Maintainers team and my cohort of 2022 Maintainers Movement Fellows. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Rheanna Chen.
Hi, everyone. Maintenance is the bridge between care and repair. So let's practice together deepening mindfulness of the body, our inner and our outer ecology. First, I ask your permission and trust to guide you the next 5 minutes. I invite you to come into stillness. So wherever you are in this world, we're sharing this moment together. So please find a comfortable seated position. Place both of your feet on the ground and your hands on your lap with your palms open, or you can have one over the other, whichever feels best. And I invite you to close your eyes. We're going to take some moments to adjust our posture so that you have a sense of sitting upright and at ease, feeling the connection from the base of your spine, maybe growing an inch taller, all the way to the top of your head, and come home to your breath. Come home to your breath. So let's take a few full breaths, releasing any tension with each exhale. So together, as a collective, we breathe in through the nose, from the lungs, all the way. And now open your mouth and release it with a sigh, let it go. Again, breathe in a little bit more, all the way from the lungs, around the heart space. Open the mouth and let it go with a sigh. Third time together. Breathe in, sipping in that air into our lungs, into the heart space, around the chest. Hold it. And now open the mouth and let it all go. Close the mouth. Keeping your eyes closed, allow your breath to be natural, relaxing with the inflow and the outflow. Invite yourself to be right here at home in this breathing body. I want you to take a moment to imagine your body as a tree. Whatever tree is your favorite, I know it might be cold in some parts of the world, and sense with curiosity where you might be living. Are you in the canopy of your mind? Is there some strong discomfort drawing your attention to another branch of leaves? Maybe you're down in your trunk. And imagine if you can move a little bit further from your crown, bringing your attention gently to any areas where you need it. Can you feel this? Maybe around your head and your face. Can you soften the muscles around the eyes? Maybe the back of your tongue softening your mouth, releasing your jaw. Can you feel your face? Maybe you can feel your throat and your neck. And what sensations are there? Hold that curiosity as we allow it to move from the shoulders, drawing your shoulders away from the ears, falling away from the neck, loosen and relax. Can you feel the sensations inside of your shoulders, softening your hands? And even that, can you feel those sensations inside of your hands? Let's go a little bit further. Continue to notice what parts of your body or of your tree feel easy to access and what are feeling more difficult. Can you feel the chest area? And can you experience those sensations inside connected to your heart? Can we soften now into our core? Seeing if you can feel inside the stomach and experience what's there. No judgment. Continue to scan down your torso, moving with your breath, easy, and see if you can feel the life all the way down to the base. How does it feel to be in this part of your body, in this part of your own tree? Allow the attention to move all the way through the legs as we head down to the roots, bringing that awareness to the soles of the feet, all 10 toes. And if you scan your body in this way, can you notice what areas feel alive? What are the areas that feel a little bit difficult to contact? Stay curious. I now invite you to take your hand, whether you're left or right, and I want you to place it on the part of your body, inviting you into presence. Wherever you feel it might be a little difficult, bringing an awareness there. It might be your heart, it might be the back of your neck, it might be your face. Choose where feels best for you. And now can we widen that attention to feel your whole body? How is your body feeling right now? And what emotions are you feeling? And can you name it? Happy, sad, angry, hurt, or stressed, any other emotion. And without judgment, keeping your hand where it is, simply explore that embodied experience with curiosity. Allow your breath to be smooth and easy, just noting those sensations coming in and letting them go just as they are. So for these moments of sitting, bring your attention to the anchor of your breath, where your heart is placed, and just rest in these sensations for a few moments until I ring the sound of the bell. Again, allowing your in-breath and your out-breath to flow as it needs. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, just to be still in this moment. So keeping your eyes closed, invite presence back into your body from the roots all the way to the top of your head, like a tree. Slowly move your fingertips and let's rub the hands together, making a little bit of warmth in the palms. And then slowly open those hands, resting over your eyes, and pause here just for a moment in this liminal space of in between, feeling the warmth of your own hands. And slowly with your eyes, blinking the light back into the space, a gentle smile, dropping the hands away. Thank you, everyone. And we're going to transition now.
Man, I'm about to transition and going to sleep. That was great, Rheanna. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm here. I'm ready. Let's do this. So, I want to open the floor up so that while we're all here, the 2022 Maintainers Movement Fellows, I want to kind of just have us, sort of sum up our experience a bit, talk about final reflections that we have on the work we've done together, the question of degrowth and what it means to embody it, how we're going to carry this work forward in our respective lives, or what we hope others can take away from it. So, and I also want to encourage everyone watching and listening to please drop your questions or comments or things that you'd like to see us address in the chat, and we will try to incorporate those as much as we can into the conversation as well. But yeah, why don't we go around the table and just sort of share our thoughts, reflections, and insights, and also why don't we all just give a quick introduction to folks watching of who we are before we do our first turnaround. So who wants to go first? I'll popcorn, people. Don't make me do it. All right. Why don't we, Tona? Why don't we go with you? You're next to me on the pixels.
Max. Hi, everyone. My name's Tona Rodriguez. I'm a professor of civil engineering in Los Angeles. And I wear a technical hat, which isn't what brings me here. I also wear a non-technical hat, which looks at technology, technological development, and its broader impacts on our planet and on us as people. And that's the side that brought me to the maintainers. This whole aspect of degrowth, I think, grew out of a suspicion that's been growing in me that this model of unrestrained growth is untenable at some point. And I wanted to investigate what this means to us as people, and more specifically to my field, what this means, for us as engineers, as developers of technology, of users of technology. So that's how I came into this topic of degrowth. Do you want me to just do an introduction, Max, or do you want me to continue on into kind of a brief reflection?
I'd say go roll on into reflection, baby.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So I interviewed two folks. The first one is a structural engineer who really, I met him through our professional society. But what struck me about him is that he's in upstate New York. We were meeting in the middle of the country, and he was there by train. So this is like a 2-day trip by train. And keep in mind that this was the sustainability committee of the Structural Engineering Institute. And he was the only one out of all of us that actually, made a personal commitment. The rest of us flew by plane there, right? He was the only one that was consistent professionally as well as personally. And I think that really made an impact on me. So, I chatted with him. And he's really into maintenance of existing buildings instead of tearing them down, respecting the carbon burden that he calls it, that's already been paid to put up this building in the first place. Good, interesting work. But his attitude is wonderful. For one, he has this great attitude towards an unknown, a great deal of hope. He really embodies this idea that, well, I don't really know how we'll get to the end point, but I certainly can't arrive at it without taking the first step and taking it conscientiously. He's very much into breaking down difficult professional barriers, especially when it has to do with younger engineers. He welcomes their challenging ideas. He welcomes them kind of pushing the boundaries of the older engineers. So a number of great attitudes that I think he embodies, and this consistency that he brings to his life, where he unifies his goals both professionally and personally, that I think that we can learn from. The other set of people that I interviewed is a colleague from my university here at Cal State LA, Choi Chatterjee, who's joined us today, as well as her husband, Omer. They have an urban homestead, and I've been wanting to visit it for a while. And one of the things I loved about their setup, one is, how everything is connected. The animals make manure, they turn the compost, they have biodefense, so plants attract certain defenses to defend other plants and so on. And this notion that with a little bit of thinking and discovery and learning, we can create a world that where everything works together is very attractive to me. Their interest in building community as well is wonderful. It's obviously not just about the plants in the garden, but how that works to bring people together in their family and in their neighborhood was also a beautiful focus to see. And similar to Jim, they both have a great appreciation for the unknown. So who knows what tomorrow is going to bring in our garden, but they welcome that with a sense of discovery and a sense of joy to see, well, what will be of the garden a year from now or 2 years from now. And where I'll finish, finally, is that one aspect of our conversation that I greatly appreciated is they both pushed back on this notion of degrowth. And Choi very nicely stated it as, well, degrowth for whom? Their background is in India and Pakistan. where the level of development is much, much lower. And the thought here is, well, who are we living in modernity with all the comforts to tell them to simply remain peasants? So they definitely raised this issue of international justice and so on, that has really made me reflect quite a bit. So I'll close by mentioning that there was a recent article in the New York Times that, in a sense, addressed this topic, and it looked at carbon emissions by zip code. And it turns out that, sure, I mean, if you're suburban, you have more carbon emissions because you drive more. But another aspect that was really significant was wealth, right? And I think this is where I would circle around to Choi's objection to say, well, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I agree fully. And I think perhaps where we ought to be focusing on is on the wealthiest people, those people that can most make a change. That change is not a sacrifice at all. And certainly, we don't want to be pushing this change on the people that need to be lifted up the most. So I will stop here because there are many other people that want to talk, as well as, we want to hear from the audience as well. But thank you for the time, and I'll turn it over to the next fellow. Max, you choose.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tona. So you guys heard it here first. Tona said, eat the rich. I'm just joking. I'm joking. But yeah, I think that was a really essential insight for all of us to sit with, right? Is if degrowth is going to mean anything synonymous with justice, how can we approach it in a way that equitably distributes, right? The already inequitably distributed costs of climate catastrophe. How do we repair that in a way that reverses that inequity? We recorded this incredible podcast together, and unfortunately we weren't able to have the great Sam Bennett on with us because she's doing so many amazing things. So I actually wanted Sam to see if you wanted to hop in, introduce yourself, and share your sort of reflections and thoughts.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam Bennett, and I have been working with everyone, but specifically with Layla. We are a duo in this fellowship, and so I'll let you unmute to Layla if you want to jump in together. Just quickly to say who I am. I'm an educator. I'm in New York, and I teach in interior design, materiality, ethnography, and textiles, and I do a lot of making. And so I was in Oaxaca while everyone was recording the podcast, working with the community there and making a lot of brushes. And I really like the question that Doug put in the chat of like, what's it like to be working together? And I would say that Layla and I approach this through a lens of the built environment and what it means to maintain things that already exist. And so it was really wonderful to be with Tona and Max and Rheanna and hear their own perspectives in different fields. And I really feel like they were so deeply connected, because when we talk about the built environment, we're talking about how things are made, where it comes from in our landscape, the actual physical things that are being made, and then who makes them. And so thinking about solidarity with all of that together, which was really incredible. And so when I think about like what I would like to continue working on with degrowth is like continuing our conversations as a group in some form, especially with Layla, and then teaching and having my students consider what it means to be a designer in this time of that we have everything already, and like how can we use what we have. So I'll pass it to Layla.
Thank you. Yeah, which just a quick note, that's something that you phrased at some point also, Tona. We have everything, I remember that in one conversation. Well, hi, I'm Layla Behjat. I'm the other half of Sam in this. My background is in architecture. I'm very classically trained, and over the last couple of years, luckily, I must say, was able to move my way into sustainable architecture, and more specifically in healthier building materials and healthier spaces, which has given me a lot of more direction and purpose in in this aspect of creating spaces. And this fellowship was my first one, and I have to repeat my gratitude to Sam for asking me to work with her on this. And over the course, you know, it's so interesting. As architects, as an architect, I feel like I embarked with this very clear notion of these are the questions. This is what we will work on. We have a year time, and here we go. Well, and then this amazing experience to, you know, meet with these amazing people that you see here, these faces, to have to start an exchange and have comfort and discomfort in conversations, having my own ideas tingled, so to say. And then as Sam was saying, realize that, yeah, I mean, we have these questions, and at the same time, there's so much more based on what our group can do. And I'm truly forever grateful for that. And I would like to keep it at that, so I can popcorn it now to wonderful Rheanna.
I'm Rheanna. I'm based in Trinidad, the island in the Caribbean. My background is in ecology and community. This past year, I lived on a 4.5-acre botanic garden, organizing events. More recently, I work as a regenerative project manager for sustainable initiatives in these more rural forest and coast communities. And from next week, I've just signed on to work for the United Nations World Food Programme as well. So that's really exciting. I'm grateful for this collective. I've grown my inner landscape and my outer landscape. The 3 audio recordings that you listen to is about building a tiny home with Malaya and Ken, on creativity and rest with Tracy and Gacier, and then on compassion and reciprocity with Alea and Michael. I have deep respect for this fellowship in the ways that it's allowed me to critically reflect on my own challenges with care, repair, and maintenance, not only in my individual life, but on a larger forefront of my family, my friends, my community, and those larger circles of advocacy and policy. And I think in the work that I'm doing right now with the background in agriculture development and gastronomy, how can I intentionally design, you know, to make good better, given these issues of climate change, injustice, inequality. And, you know, it's a lot. I can't do it alone. And often in my industry, a lot of people burn out. There's a lot of mental health issues. And coming out of the pandemic, this need to rest. And not from a sense of ego, but actually when we rest and we pause to reflect, then we can better show up not only within our own care practices, but to greater care for the world at large, which definitely sounds optimistic, but I think we have to find the balance of an informed, empowered stance, you know, of how we want to offer to the world, but also first offering that to ourselves, regardless of culture, country, background. And yes, it's definitely an intersection. And degrowth is something that I guess was a bit of a challenge for me because my background is informed by the forest, by nature, by the biodiversity I live in. And I think to degrow just feels very counterintuitive. Yes, we're meant and designed to grow, and being a human is a very complex experience. But I guess the question is to always ask, in what ways do we wish to grow? Same way in a garden that, you know, the garden grows where you water and where you nurture. So where is it in my own life, inspired and informed by the fellows around me, that I actually want to see grow? Because, you know, life is so short and tomorrow isn't guaranteed, you know, and I think coming back to that mortality of existence, not in too much of a philosophical sense, but where are we able to find our niche in this grand ecosystem and to contribute in a more meaningful and present way?
Hell yeah. And I'll just
Over to you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Rheanna. And again, you guys can see why this has been such a special group to be in fellowship with over the past year. And again, I would say we can't get into everything, but I would highly recommend that you check out everyone's work here. Please check out the podcast that we did together. Please send us your thoughts, reflections, critiques, right? I mean, we're always learning on this front. And, I'll just say a little bit about me and what I took away from this project. So my name is MAXIMILLIAN ALVAREZ. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Real News Network here in Baltimore. I'm also the host of the podcast Working People, where I interview workers about their lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles. I also do so in other areas, like for my book, The Work of Living, where I interviewed 10 workers at the end of year 1 of COVID. I do my Art of Class War segments at Breaking Point. So I've committed my life to this. And that's what I was really coming into this fellowship with, right? Having done so much work to interview working people around the US and outside of the US about what they went through during COVID-19, I think like it became so apparent to me, even more so than before COVID, right? Just how much it's flesh and blood human beings holding society up, holding the world itself up. And working people showed that during COVID, right? While the rich and powerful retired to their second or third homes, right? It was regular working people who were delivering food to immunocompromised folks who were locked at home. It was working people who showed up, even if they weren't given the proper PPE to their shifts at the hospital, at great risk to themselves and their families. It was working people who kept the supply chain running. Just innumerable examples that I could give of that kind of hard work that is done by people with lives and families and backstories and aspirations. That is what I think of when I think of the maintaining the built world, right? That human labor that goes into it, that love, that care, that dedication, that grit. And I wanted to try to kind of carry that into the work that we were doing together for this fellowship. And I can't say enough good things about the amazing folks that I got to speak to for my interviews for our group project, like David Whiteside, the founder of Tennessee Riverkeeper, right? A truly dedicated human being who was fighting an incredibly uphill battle to hold big polluters accountable for destroying his home and this vital waterway in the deep South that so many people depend on, right? And I would highly encourage everyone to support that work if you can. I also got to speak to one of the most amazing human beings that I've ever known, Chile Yazi of the Navajo Nation, a guy whose life story is almost so incredible that you can't believe that it's really happened, but he's just such a down-to-earth guy, but he's so caring, so loving, and he has such a beautiful way of understanding the world. And we talked about how he is working with fellow farmers in Navajo Nation in New Mexico, right, to commit to regenerative agriculture and to claim indigenous sovereignty by being able to feed themselves, right? It became very apparent during COVID-19 how dependent Chile and his community were on outside supply chains. And so when those supply chains were disrupted, it became very clear that they needed to fix, their ability to sustain themselves with different forms of agriculture and cooperation and so on and so forth. But I wanted to just sort of like end on a thought about kind of what the sort of labor approach has taught me about the question of degrowth, right? Because I agree with Doug, I agree with the others in the live chat that again, like we were all very skeptical of the question of degrowth, right? I think we're just very skeptical and discerning people in general, right? But we were interrogating it from every which way. And I think being forced to talk to people and realize that degrowth can mean a lot of different things in people's lives. It can look a lot of different ways. And we're not really in a position right now to say which is the best. But we can encourage, right? We can till that soil. We can do what we can to help others feel empowered to do that work. And as right now, we need all of it at this point, right? We need everybody doing everything that they can. But here's where I think I had kind of a bit of a revelation listening to the episode that we all did together, right? Again, my area of expertise is labor and labor organizing, I do that. I cover that all the time. Last night I was in this room talking to a panel of like 7 different workers about who are still on strike at Warrior Met Coal, railroad workers, workers at the University of California, the New School, the Fort Worth Star Telegram, so on and so forth. When you talk to, folks organizing in their workplaces, like take one of the examples from this year, right? The tremendous victory of the independent Amazon labor union at a Amazon fulfillment center on Staten Island that has like 8,000 people working at it, right? If you were like Chris Smalls or you were Michelle Valentin Nieves and you were thinking, how the hell are we going to organize a facility that massive and we're going to be facing such intense union busting from the company? The answer is one person at a time, one worker at a time, one conversation at a time, right? As Cory Doctorow and Rebecca Giblin would say, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? And so I think what I've learned talking to organizers, much like I learned talking to the folks that I did for the other interview for this, James Hyatt, former oil and gas worker in Louisiana, who now works for the Louisiana Bucket Brigade. Clark, a commercial diver who's worked for, primarily for oil companies, repairing pipes in the Gulf of Mexico and stuff like that. And Megan Milliken-Bivin, the founder of True Transition. I would highly recommend folks check out that interview that I did, which is published on the podcast. But they kind of say the same thing, right? It's like you talk one person at a time, and then they start talking to other people, right? So I want to emphasize the sort of cascading movement action that happens when you inspire someone else to take that action. Just like organizing an 8,000 person warehouse, we're not going to get from here to utopia in one moonshot. It's going to happen by unleashing the power and energy and brilliance and love and care that all of us has within us. But so long, for most of our lives, it kind of stays contained within us. And I think that the more that we can encourage people to unleash that and do what they can in their respective locales, the more that cascading movement action will lead to more action. Okay, I'll shut up.
Thank you so much, Movement Fellows. It's been amazing to hear from you all. And just to continue the conversation and kind of open it up to folks in the audience, what we're going to do is utilize the hand raise feature. And so if you have something that you would like to share and participate in the conversation, that the fellows can respond and be in conversation with, that would be great. Yeah, thank you so much to our movement fellows for sharing. It's truly been an amazing year. And as everyone has said, it's a little bit bittersweet to know that this is our last meeting, but knowing that this is just the beginning and that we are rooting and growing. And I think that the foundation and the conversations that we've had are really the beginning to start sprouting and continuing really incredible work that's happening.
While people raise their hands, I'll just jump in here and say a couple of things, because I think this sidebar on the chat has actually been really interesting to be following. I think it was Doug that made an interesting point about degrowth being a meeting place of perspectives. And I fully agree. And I think that we as fellows ended up landing on a broad definition like that, because we really couldn't agree on specifically what we were looking at. But there's this intuition, right, that this growth model that we're living in isn't working out. And like we've been talking on the sidebar as well, especially in the global north, where we have these issues of consumption exacerbated. So yeah, I mean, I think it really is much more, like you say, Doug, an issue of generating a conversation, much more than pushing a particular set of points. The other part of this conversation that was really interesting was the global north versus south. And it reminded me a little bit about Glenn Alvarez's insight that a lot of these concepts can be appropriated by forces that support the status quo. So like sustainability, for instance, has now just become another way to market your material as green, just to give one example. And I think that any concept faces that danger, and I think degrowth does as well. I mean, if degrowth is framed as lowering the bar equally, we have a problem here, right? So I think that without keeping a notion of international solidarity always present, this notion has a lot of danger behind it. And I think that these points were mentioned nicely in the chat.
And I could add in there, Tona, when I think of degrowth, I also think of regeneration, which is what my lifelong work is dedicated to. And I know there's a lot of heavy interest in access to good food and healthcare and distribution of, I guess, wealth surplus and in the global south. And because of the communities I work with, and I learned a lot, especially from Max with regards to advocacy and human justice. But it's how do we organize ourselves? I think design is really important, and there's education, academia. So between Sam, Layla, and Tona, but all those different moving parts of our civilizations are an extension of these smaller communities, which are extensions of our smaller units and then ourselves. So in doing the meditation earlier with y'all, it's even identifying which are the parts within us that aren't in balance, because I'm a big believer that for there to be more just systems and structures, of course, there's oppression that we have to face, there's racism, and there's structural things that historically, especially in the Caribbean of post-colonialism, that there are generations of trauma that we really have to address. But we also have to address our own trauma too, and they have to go hand in hand in tandem. But something I believe strongly as I'm working with communities that are affected by a lot of climate change disasters. In the Caribbean, we have a lot of hurricanes. Recently were like record floods that happened. Some of these communities were cut off from the rest. And the voices that are coming out is how can we organize ourselves in community governance? Where can there be more collective sovereignty, and who the farmers are, the fisher folk, who the community leaders, access to funding, building certain infrastructure where it's not this model of dependent on this external force, but they themselves on the ground are empowering themselves and organizing based on skill sets and strengths. But there is a role in government, in global negotiations that we can't ignore. And I believe fully in that too, like who are at the top of these power and decision making. Yes, it can be easy to disempower us too, but where are we in this niche of an ecosystem? So I see certain names like Anne and Leo and Timothy and Jessica and Jody, and it's just choosing where in this world we want to commit our focus to and doing it well. We won't get it perfect, but as long as we feel like we're looking after ourselves and in harmony, where those ripples, because how can I show up and try to fight issues of hunger and inequality and oppressed communities when I myself might be tired or not nourishing myself well? So I just want to bring it back that these are issues that are so huge, but don't forget, we have to, I'm always learning how to care. And so for all those in this room who don't feel like the most caring human beings, I can raise my hand. I often can neglect myself too, and I'm guilty of like burning myself out in the name of trying to do best and serve other people. But it's always to come back, and then there's only 24 hours in a day, and we spend a third of the day sleeping. So how are we going to do a little bit each day? But yeah, the collective of compassionate but dedicated individuals to solving these greater world issues.
Can I chime into that? Thank you, Rheanna, for pointing that out. And you made me realize and remember how, in my perception, we often came to the point where we saw this very close connection between maintenance and community. I remember, us talking about Tona repairing the beetle and having people come from the hood and, discussing it. But also this notion that what I'm hearing from you right now, that this concept that we currently frame as degrowth which can have any name, is not something that you can do in isolation and in this individualistic concept that we run on often, that it needs community, it needs everybody's shoulder a little bit, but also that it is an interconnectedness throughout today, but it also connects us to the yesterday and it connects us to the tomorrow. One thing that really struck me was the question of, can our future generation afford what we do today, what we pass on to them? Not just the climate crises, but in the built environment, what I create today, what exactly is it that I'm passing on? What type of maintenance will they have to carry, and can they afford it? And so I feel like there's such wealth for me in thinking that way. It gives me a sense of gentleness and stepping back, trying to be mindful of that, as we also inherited something from those who were before us. So thank you, Rheanna. You kindled that thought in me again.
Hell yeah. And I just wanted to hop in and say one final thing to pick up on a comment that Choi left that I thought was very apt, right? I think that one thing that really came out in the interview that I did with, as I said, James Hyatt, former worker in the oil fields in Louisiana, Clark, commercial diver who largely does jobs for oil companies. And I don't want to put him on the spot, but we have another brother here who I've had the honor to talk with, who was actually working on the Deepwater Horizon 12 years ago, when it blew and caused the largest marine oil spill in human history, right? And so I mentioned that to say that these are the people that these industries hold up when they say we can't possibly break our dependence on the oil and gas industry because they provide jobs, right? How are you going to deny a job to this humble oil field worker, right? This oil rig worker, this commercial diver? But you rarely ever get to hear from those people themselves and hear what they're thinking about, like to hear the pain and devastation from someone who was there when that oil rig blew and killed his fellow co-workers. Like you don't get over that. And is this the kind of job that is so impossible for us to deny other people? Is this what we are saving the oil and gas industry for? Right. I think that what really came through in the conversation that I had with Clark, James, and Megan is that they even said, they're like, it's a fiction. Because we in this industry know that they're cutting jobs, they're reducing labor costs, they're doing what everyone's doing. They're piling more work onto fewer workers so that they can gain more profits. This is what the railroads have been doing, right? We just had a national crisis. We're still in a national crisis because workers are being run into the ground because rail carriers are cutting their operating costs every single year, making the work more dangerous. And it's so that they can rake in billions of dollars of record profits, right? And so oil and gas industry workers will tell you, it's like, these jobs aren't going to be here forever. So when they tell you they're job providers, like the question is for how long, right? And so I think that what that really told me is like, if we actually build alliances with our fellow workers, if we actually listen to one another, like we can lead the charge to transition away from these planet destroying, community destroying, life destroying industries. But also, I think the elephant in the room, something that I took away from degrowth, is that it doesn't just mean like scaling down production across the board. What it also forces you to acknowledge is that we have the resources on this planet, in our world already, to live sustainably. But everything is just so out of whack that all of that is going to like a handful of people. Right. And so I actually think that for as much as there needs to be an emphasis on care and love and compassion, there also is a radical element to this, right? Like radical redistribution of hoarded resources, wealth, and power is essential to our survival, right? And I think that if you actually talk to workers, they know that better than anyone. They know who's screwing them over on the railroads. It's not going to kill the rail industry if you give workers sick days. It's killing the rail industry that Warren Buffett is putting billions of dollars in his pocket by destroying our supply chain. So that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll toss it to whoever wants to hop in before we end.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for putting this together. This is probably the biggest collection of people in the United States who have heard of degrowth that I've ever been a part of. So that's really exciting to see. I'm not sure where I actually found the ad for this that you guys had put on, but it might have been through the program. I'm literally studying degrowth right now in a master's program. And there's so many things to talk about, but I think what I want to focus on the most is the idea that all of these movements are connected. We need to stop looking at this world in a vertical way and start looking at it in a horizontal way, because it's vast and it's a huge project, essentially remaking society in a way that isn't based on production, consumption, accumulation, and fossil fuels. So I think what I would like to just kind of bestow upon everyone is the idea that we're all in this together, and anything you can do at any level is productive. I try to speak to one person every day about degrowth. I go out and I like make a point to find someone and get into a conversation, and eventually if you talk to someone long enough, it always devolves into politics. And so I've coined this term devangelizing, where I go out and I bring the word of degrowth to as many people as I can. And I think that, you know, as an individual, that's probably all we can really do at this point until we've built enough foundation and enough community to where it can turn into something actually monumental and life-changing for everyone. So I would like to just say, you know, thanks for putting this together.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone coming. We will download the chat. So feel free to just flood the chat with all your resources and ideas and quotes and movements and community and people to be looking to together, and to we want to leave you with this idea of the low-hanging fruit and the one step and the one day at a time. And within this movement space, within this movement fellowship, I think that coming back to understanding that we have power, that together in a group we have power, that's really something that we want to hone in on. And so just again, thank you so much for coming. We are at time, but I just want to share very, very quickly about some other offerings that we're going to be having at the maintainers. We're going to have maintenance sessions coming up here in 2023 that you can register for. We really want to keep this conversation going, so please spotlight the maintainers that you know, the organizations that are doing this work. We also just welcome guest blog post writers. It's really important that we keep sharing this work is happening and that it's essential. You can download the Maintainers Coloring Book if you're looking for a little bit of self-care. You can stay up to date with the maintainers and the fellows over on Instagram and Twitter. And let's see, last but not least, we would love for you to be a part of our community listserv, which is very active in a way that is a really great way to continue the conversation within the Maintainers Network, as well as sign up for our quarterly newsletter. But we're going to continue to be sharing the work that the fellows have done this year, and we are just so grateful for you to have come and join us today. Thanks so much, and thank you so much to our fellows. We love you and we will miss you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Yeah, thanks to
Solidarity
the
from Baltimore.
folks. Thanks to the audience. Thanks for your engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
See ya, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.